as we can, but sometimes we need the help of the Commonwealth, and Rep. Smolla is always there to help create that bridge for us. So we're very appreciative of that help. Heather, I want to thank Heather for this. This has been something we've sort of walked into when Heather and I came here, but it's an important issue, a critical issue, and so again, I just want to thank you all for coming and taking the time to make it where we can collectively talk about this and share questions, because a lot of you probably have the same questions, and we can answer them together this way. So, thank you.
We're just going to check to see if anybody has logged in. Nope.
So we'll just keep it open in case?
No one's on it.
Okay. All right, so we'll just keep it open just in case we can?
Yeah, it's open.
Yeah, so they can just keep the meeting open where they can log on.
All right, so we'll go ahead and we'll do some brief introductions, even though Robin's already, somebody just joined. See, there we go. So as Robin said, I'm Heather Blakely. I'm the DPW director. Some of you have met me, but I have the lovely assistance of Michelle Garvin, who is the administrator's helping me here today. I'll let everybody up here introduce themselves, but this is Tara.
Hi, Tara McManus with Weston and Sampson, design engineer.
Robin Grimm, town administrator.
Laureen Poland, Salt Remediation Program, Mass DOT.
And in the back, this is,
Hi, Dan Rask, I'm also with Mass DOT.
and Todd.
State Representative Thompson.
Okay, so I think most of you understand why we're here. We're here to present the findings that we had, with the assistance of Weston and Sampson, prepared an alternatives analysis for different options of getting water to the Walker Pond neighborhood area, and different scenarios also of where the water would be provided. So this analysis is going to be all-encompassing. It's not going to select anything tonight. We just want to present it so you guys have an idea what we looked at and how we came to some of the numbers and what we're looking for feedback from you guys for the future. Go ahead, this first slide. So how did we get here? So I did a little bit of a historical thing. I'm not going to say it's 100% accurate, but this is my take on it. Multiple residents in the Walker Pond area had concerns regarding their wells back in 2020 and probably even prior. Some residents are taking part in the Mass DOT salt remediation program, where they've sampled their wells and they've joined the program. You have additional feedback from the Board of Health, where residents went to the Board of Health and said they had concerns about their wells and their wells' potability and, what was in their drinking water. Board of Health did do a study to look at what the effects of salt were on arsenic and other heavy metals, and we do have that study, which was more of a paper study, but they did some research to say that there might be some type of connection. In January of 2023, this is when I got involved, more residents came to us and said, what can we do? In addition, they were also going to the state and asking for their assistance, to Rep. Smolla's assistance. So Rep. Smolla was able to bring us and the Mass DOT's salt remediation program together and say, can we look at this as a holistic approach, and is there any options for getting potable water to Walker Pond? So that's where we started. Mass DOT was able to utilize their consultant that they already had on board to perform the analysis, and that's when Weston and Sampson got involved. Okay, go ahead, next slide. So what did we look at? First, we had to figure out how we were going to get the water to the neighborhood, because it obviously having the Mass Pike in the middle of where we have water and where we in the neighborhood posed a challenge. So we basically had three options. Open cut the Mass Pike, which means dig a trench across it. Horizontal directional drill underneath the Mass Pike. Or possibly utilize the bridge over 49 and come back out into the neighborhoods. And we're going to talk about each option and what we looked at. So go ahead. So what we're going to look at, each option we looked at what the environmental permitting potential would be, because that's a big cost on the upfront, what the subsurface conditions are, how easy is it actually an option to construct it. So we're looking at things like, can you actually open cut the Mass Pike? And then the engineering costs associated. She did go to option 1, sorry. So, open cutting the Mass Pike. The environmental concerns were relatively minimal. We looked at what we had for mapping of wetlands, and they weren't great, like we didn't have a huge concern there. Subsurface, we didn't do any drilling, but they did review the records of the subsurface conditions in that area, and bedrock does appear to be 9 to 30 feet below grade, which isn't a huge concern. Constructability. So this is when we started talking to the Mass DOT's direct construction group. And basically, the feedback is this isn't really a viable option. With all of the entrance and exit ramps and the construction cost associated with traffic control and what would need to be done, it's not a viable option. The preliminary estimate for just doing that open cut, really not even doing a whole look at the construction, because could even be higher than this, was $1.8 million. So that's just to get it from Picker Road across to the side of the neighborhood. Go to option 2. So this is a horizontal directional drilling. It has the same environmental concerns. The subsurface conditions, again, were the same because we're still looking at the same route. We're just talking about going under the road as opposed to digging up the road. The construction group, although there is some concerns when you do this type of directional drilling, we will have to do more research before you could actually just go out and do it. Take some additional design. It does appear to be feasible there. We have to look at things of where the bedrock is and what the construction was like of the road. But it does seem to be an option that we could do. It is specialized, what we call very specialized construction, meaning you have to be highly trained in how to do this and have very specialized equipment. But the initial cost estimate from Picker Road, where the water line ends now, to the Walker Pond area, is just about $800,000. And then option 3 would be to utilize a Route 49 bridge and bring the water line up to the bridge and then back down from the other side. So there is some additional concerns with the environmental permitting, but they're still not super high, meaning there's not that great of wetlands there. We think there might be some wet areas that we'd have to be careful to avoid. Subsurface conditions are about the same, 8 to 15 feet, which if we're digging a trench shouldn't be a huge concern, but we do know, I'm sure you guys are all aware, as you come into your neighborhood, there is a lot of ledge on that one side going down, so we would have to do some investigation there. But then we spoke to the Mass DOT bridge group. That bridge is what they consider structurally deficient, so it would have to be replaced if we were going to put a water line on it. So obviously, that is a very large cost that you wouldn't want to have to bore by this project. In addition, in order to put the water line in that route, we would need a pump station and probably some type of storage tank, because it gets to the location where that elevation is higher, so much higher, that we don't have enough pressure to maintain our minimum pressures. So those two items on top of, the additional costs, it's already at $3.6 million. So we looked at those 3 options from the bat just to see how we were going to get there. I think you can all see that the most logical option for us, if we were going to proceed forward, would to look at the horizontal directional drilling. Okay? So that, from a technical standpoint, would be the way that we would recommend going. Okay? You can go back. So this is in the presentation, and I can make these slides available to anybody. We can put them out on the website, or anybody who wants them to look at the numbers closer or anything. This is just a summary of the 3 different options that we looked at. Description, they're all feasible from a permitting standpoint. They're all feasible from a subsurface standpoint. Constructability, truthfully, the only option 2 was the only one that's feasible, but it is specialized, and the cost of option 2 is the least. Okay, so when we looked at our alternatives, those were our alternatives that we looked at. Now we need to talk about service areas. So we've got the water line to the other side. Now, what where are we going to service with this water line? So we just tried to look at, you know, option A, B, and C, and basically growing off of them. We know that option A, the scenario A, is where most of the contamination is right now. So that's where our smallest option. Scenario B incorporates A and B together. So don't just think it's just one or the other, okay? It's both. And then C goes all the way out to be all the roads from, and I'm going to get them all screwed up because I always do, Village, Old Village Road, Walker Pond, and Wells Park. I got them, okay? So it would incorporate all three of those. So scenario B goes to Falls Road and cuts down across, and then option C goes all the way out and loops back around. That makes sense? Okay. So again, they did estimates. You know, these are paper estimates, no hard design has been done, but they're basically done by linear foot estimates. It's about 4,500 feet of water main. If we do Woodline Drive, that's what we're calling option A. If we do Woodline, Wells Park, Parker Road up to Falls, that's about 10,500 feet. And if we do the whole area, it's about 15,900 feet, okay? And then you can see the cost of just the scenarios was estimated. And then the total cost is that option 2 plus the scenario cost. And then the estimated betterment without any additional funding, we'll get into the whole, I'm sure people have questions. If it had to be paid for out of pocket by residents, we took the estimated number of households and just divided by the total cost, okay? So that's where you get that range of $105,000 to $85,000. And those are numbers of present day, right? They're not a hard and fast number until we got through the design, through the actual cost, the whole project. We wouldn't know, but we needed to get into what the range of the cost of a project would be. For total numbers, we're looking from anywhere of 3.2 million to 9 million. Go ahead. All right. So what is the next steps? So I want to encourage everyone, as good practice, not just because, to go ahead and test your well water yearly. Even if you don't see contamination right now, you don't know what it's going to do in a year or two from now. That's how a plume works. Some of you know you have contamination. You don't particularly need to test it, right? In addition, I encourage you to contact Lorraine, who is here tonight, and look into what you can do with the salt remediation program if you do find out that you have salt contamination. As a neighborhood, what I'm going to ask is that you get together and review and figure out how you want to move forward, what your next steps are. And then as town and state officials, what we will do is work on, can we find any funding above and beyond to bring that price? Because I know, I'm a homeowner too, I don't think I'd be rushing around to spend 85 grand to get water. But at some point, I'm sure it is very feasible, and I know because I've also had a well that goes dry, and I don't have an option at all, that I would spend. There's a number that I would say, yes, I want public water at. So that's where we have to get to a point to, and that's what you guys are going to have to work towards as a community, and as a neighborhood, where that point is. And then I know there's been some discussion in the past of sewer, but at this point, all we had from funding for and what to look for and assistance was with the water. So we wanted to bring that back to you. We can explore sewer in a different time, or we can put it back on the table. But until we can figure out how we're moving forward and with what scenario and what options do you want to move forward with, I think we know what option is the most feasible to get it there. It's the scenario of where we're going to cover it and how many people are going to want to be part of it. Because after that, we have to get funding. and it would have to go on town meeting. So there's multiple steps still to do before we can get there. So, at this time, we can open it up for questions. I should have got a mic. Hold on, we're going to get a microphone so that you can come up to a microphone and ask any questions, only because, and here he comes. He's like, I got the mic. This way, anybody listening from home can also hear what your question is and what the responses are, okay? And if you want us to put any specific slide back up, we can try.
Maybe I should speak first. My name's Steve Zoll. Of course, I know Lauren, I know Heather. And being a resident of Woodlawn Drive, we know we have some contaminants that was actually caused through the state from their desalting of the roads and whatnot. And my question to everybody here is at what point does the state take responsibility to getting water to our houses at Woodlawn Drive? And I know it's based on numbers, but if we can get an idea, okay, in terms of what, Lorraine, what you might need in order for the people at Woodlawn Drive, because I've taken tests, I've been fighting this since 1985, and I hope I can last longer before I die, okay, that we have water. But all I'm saying is there are houses along Wells Park that are further down that are the water's decent. Okay, I don't know about the hardness, but I don't know about the arsenic. But I know the contaminant of the sodium chloride is not an issue for some of those houses, particularly on Walker Pond Road. So what do people that do have salt contaminant, at what point will the state take control of getting us the money or getting us the water to our homes? And that would eliminate a lot of the funding probably that you're looking for, Heather, in terms of getting the water to our Walker Pond.
So if a property owner is in the salt remediation program, we have multiple ways of providing clean water. One is drilling a deeper well. We're very successful at that. Another is installing a reverse osmosis system in your basement, and the third is a water line. So those are the three choices that we have. If, as a steward of taxpayer money, it is our responsibility to make sure we're doing the most cost-effective solution to provide you clean water, while being prudent with taxpayer money. So, for an example, if there were 5 properties in the neighborhood that had salt contamination, and I'm just going to use hypotheticals here, and it cost us $100,000 to mitigate the impacts of salt on that property and provide clean water, that's about $500,000. Does that make financial sense for MassDOT to spend the money to send a water line over for $3 million when we can do it for $500,000? So what I encourage is I encourage as many of you to go out and sample your wells and see how many of you have salt contamination. Last I knew, there was probably 13. There's probably more. I don't know that everybody really kind of sampled their wells. The more people that are impacted by salt, then we have a better argument and we can come up with more funding, if that makes sense.
Again, question is, we could probably go through the reversed osmosis, get it so that we could actually drink, because it does take away the arsenic. It does lower the the chloride. And my question is, even though the well water still contains the sodium chloride, that does a lot of damage to our pumps. I've had to replace 3 of them so far. I know other people have gotten the hot water tanks, they had to replace them 3 times. The sodium is still creating a lot of problems throughout the house.
There's two different types of RO systems. You may be thinking of the one of under the counter, which provides clean water at the tap. But this one is point of entry. So anything that comes into your house, all through your plumbing system, everything would be treated with RO water. It's a very expensive system. It's comprehensive.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes, yes.
Just so that anybody at home can hear, if you want to, but I think your comment was there does need to be the space to put it in, which is another concern. But I think you need to hear what she's saying. The more people that you can convince to join the salt remediation program, the better chance it is that you will get a water line. Okay? And if that number can come closer to what there is for what the cost is, and if there's any other funding, potentially that's your best way of going forward. Okay?
It's critical that you test. It's critical that you test. Because again, there's no way to know that you'll fall into that program unless you're doing the testing. And again, the more, it's just a number, it's literally a question of numbers. Or do we individually just drill new wells for a few people, 500,000, but if at 100,000 hypothetically each, something like that would add up very quickly. You know, the difference between 5 of you at 500,000 and 13 of you at $1.3 million.
You can see when we looked at the individual costs, when we looked at Woodlawn, it was just over that $100,000 number. So it gets very close to being cost effective once you get more people in this program. So it's not, they're not saying no. They're saying you have to show us the contamination, show us the numbers, and then it becomes much more feasible for them to make their presentation, because you got to remember, she's answering to all of us too, essentially. They have the program because they're spending taxpayers' money.
Question for Lorraine, did you get your telephone fixed finally?
I did. Thank you very much. I didn't.
One question, Ian Beaudry, Wells Park Road. I just have a question, is it only salt? What about the arsenic? And where does that come in with funding from the state?
So I can speak more to the arsenic because that's not, so arsenic in this area is naturally occurring, ironically. It's actually very common in the, not just Wells Park area, but like through Charlton and everything else. There's actually studies done in the state that shows that the arsenic is a naturally occurring in the rock formations. So that's where that's coming from. The reason why, and I know, and I'm not going to get into the particulars, but your water has to be considered potable for you to be in part of the salt remediation program, meaning that if it's not potable for something else, like lead or arsenic or any other contaminant, E. coli, anything, which you don't want to be drinking any of these anyways. And honestly, even if you don't have salt but you have arsenic, you should be very much looking at doing something for your water anyways. So that's my public health little hat. So it's good for you, even if you don't have salt, it's good for you to know what else is in your water, because you're drinking it every day. Or if you're not drinking it, you're still bathing in it, it's still there. It's naturally occurring, it's not coming from the state. Whether the salt has an effect on it or not, there is a paper study from the Board of Health that says it does have some effect, but that's not, there is a policy in place of what they have to do. Your water has to be considered potable to be in the program, meaning you might have to treat for those other contaminants. Okay? But I do think it's a good point. For those of you who might not be right now directly affected by the salt, it's still a good point to know what's in your water, because that might make your decision of whether you would want potable water or not provided to you, or are you going to take on the cost of treating your own water?
I do know a lot of people that live on the north side of the highway.
Sorry.
It's never quiet in my life, so I didn't think I even needed a mic. But people that live on the north side of the pike, there are homes that a lot of people probably don't realize that they have arsenic in their water. because the arsenic is in its natural state, and some people couldn't even sell their house unless they put in their own,
System.
yeah. So, for the rest of the people at Walker Pond, if we can get the people at Woodlawn Drive, okay, if we can prove, and the state's not denying us at all, that we have a problem with the de-icing. But if we can get a number of the people at Walker Pond to start their program, go through that potassium chloride, which does cost a little bit more, but for the year that it takes a couple $100, you'd probably spend that much on getting bottled water. So,
And Mr. Zoe, because we've already established that there is a problem with road salt, the program is abbreviated for 6 months because other people have already gone through it for a year. So it's an abbreviated process now. They still have to reach out to me.
so I'm just encouraging people at Walker Pond to go through their process to see if they even have arsenic in their water. And for the people at Woodlawn Drive, I maybe now that she has her phone fixed, we could probably get in touch with her. So, that's all.
Sorry. Is there any way that, since we know that there's an issue on Woodlawn Drive, the state knows there's an issue, the town knows there's an issue, is there any way that the state or the town could do a mailing to everyone? Because it comes from us, we've been talking about this for a long time, and people just don't believe other people. You know what I mean? And
I think that's one of the reasons we tried to have this public meeting, was to get the word out and that you could hear it from us. You know, we can, obviously I can make these slides available, and
Well, I
you,
know, but that conversation, like the conversation that we have in meetings is someone will say, oh, you know, Steve will come up and say there's arsenic, and then they'll be snickering, it's not arsenic, you know what I mean? It's just that kind of county mentality, I guess. So if we could get something from the state that said, we know that your neighbors have a contaminated well. We know that there was some cause by the state, and we suspect, or it's possible, that you could have some contamination. We recommend testing your well and getting on this program with the link. Something that just goes out to whatever that C area is,
Yep.
We can
Just so
figure out a
that
way,
people-
whether it comes from us or the Commonwealth. I don't know
Yeah.
where the Commonwealth sits on that, but we certainly can at least put something saying there is a
Yeah.
program established, this area has been designated, or they're aware of, blah, blah, blah. So the process is, I mean, the fact that the Commonwealth is acknowledging they're aware of it, it's already expediting the process because they've gone through the long range. So we can certainly put something in saying, we're working with the Commonwealth, please get your testing done and contact.
And like Woodlawn, there's 23 houses, right? So the numbers get pretty high if they're all.
Right, so we
contaminated.
figured,
So
like-
we need those guys that are on Woodlawn really should test your wells and submit, hurry up. Because, you know, it's there.
I'd like to say that that's a great point too, and in other projects we've worked on, you know, we've done a lot of outreach, and there was a core group of property owners that wanted to connect, and wouldn't you know it, once we were able to start extending the water line, more people started coming in, and they got frustrated because they couldn't really get in on the water line at that time, so they needed to wait.
I think there's the neighborhood, there's definitely some fear for cost. They did this a while ago and they shut it, they didn't want to do it in our neighborhood before because of costs, right? That's now, I don't know, 20 years later.
That was sewer though.
It's sewer and water, or whatever it is, it's now 20 times the cost that it would have been then, right? Lesson learned. The other question that we had was, in a betterment, could you explain if it was $82,000, is that 30 years? Or is that you have to come up with 80?
no, it is over a period of time, I can tell you that. It's dependent on what is voted at town meeting, so we can't commit now, but normally there are 20 or 30 years, yes.
Yeah, I think it's
20,
only 20,
25,
yep.
30, and they are at a very low interest rate, so it is, and it gets paid on a yearly basis, like just right with your taxes. So it's, so there's two options when they do a betterment. You can pay it all up front,
Yep.
or you can finance it out. And,
Here's my.
yeah, exactly. I don't think anybody's pulling $80,000.
If we can do that.
So we get that, and that would be something that, once we got to what are you looking for with options, and who's gonna be opting in, and what are we voting on? Just like they did the sewer betterments 20 years ago, it has to go through, and that's why I said it has to go through town meeting. But some of that gets changed if the state is going to fund any, or if we can find any other funding. So, step one is testing and upping the numbers that are in the program, because that's only gonna help decrease the cost.
And then the determination on funding from there becomes more concrete.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yes, absolutely, Todd.
How are you? Thank you. I'm sorry if my back is to some of you. Thank you very much. I just wanted to, so Steve was the guy that brought this to me first years ago. Now, I don't remember how many years ago, but we've had many emails back and forth since, meetings. We brought the town, and the town has been absolutely phenomenal, and so is DOT, to come together and talk about all this. So the minute we came up here to meet, the town moved quick and the state moved very quickly. But I just want to relay something to you, to go to the point that you just made, sir, and something that we've talked about is that, so I can tell you, in preparation for this meeting today, I look back in my notes over the course of the last couple of years for the people that have reached out to my office to talk about water in this neighborhood. And out of the people that reached out to me, it's maybe 10 or so, you know, in that either Woodlawn or in the entire neighborhood that we're talking about, in that A, B, and C category. But I looked up, and at least 6 of them that had contacted me haven't tested and aren't part of the remediation program. And I've pressed them. I said, look, we want to go to the state. We want to work with the town. We want to make a case, but we need data, we need information, we need people to participate. So if we leave with anything tonight, I encourage you, if you haven't gone that far yet, please strongly consider doing that. I've sent reminder emails out to people that have contacted my office with information from the state about how to bridge the gap, who to communicate with, both at the town and on the state level, to do it. But one of the things that was relayed to me was there was a concern it was going to be more costly to them. And almost like some people even believe that this betterment and cost to them as homeowners was going to get assessed automatically, and all of a sudden they were going to have this big additional bill. We're not at that stage yet. That's not what testing and getting into the program is all about. This is simply for us to get you in the program and to collect data so that we can figure out what the next steps are. So if you're not in it, please, I'd encourage you to do it. Go talk to your neighbors. We are all accessible to try and help people or answer any questions along the way, but we really need to get more people to move forward, and then we can figure out what that remedy is going to be. You saw some of that information tonight, but in order for the state and the town to come together to figure out what this is going to look like in the end, we need to have more people that are involved. So hopefully we'll spread that message after tonight, now that we've had this forum, and answer questions that people may have, even if they want to do it off the record. Feel free to call us. We're happy to answer any of those questions that aren't in a public forum. So I just wanted to press that point. So, thank you.
Question about the testing, because I don't know if I misunderstood you. Were you saying that we should be testing through the program, or get a test? Are there recommended places that we get tested? How does that work?
Yeah, that's a good question, and I apologize. I asked the Board of Health to get me some names of places to test, so I will get that out to everybody. I will send it through the contacts to disseminate where you can go and have your water tested. It isn't astronomically expensive. I believe it's probably in the $100 range, just so you know. But they have procedures. You take the sample, they'll tell you how to run the water for 5 minutes and then collect a sample or something like that, so you'll get an idea how to do the testing, okay?
What we can do in that letter that we send out, encouraging people to get the testing, is just put the whole process in, who to submit it to and all that stuff.
Because you don't want to go to some place that then you say, well, that's not.
It's not qualified.
Correct.
Well,
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
You can't go get the self-test kit,
Right. That's why I asked.
the hardware store, right?
We'll get some recommendations of different labs that do it in the area. Microbac's one of them, I know, because we use them at the water plant. So there are some labs in the
But we'll
area.
even outline who to send it to and how to make sure you're doing it right for the program.
Heather Egan, 13 Old Village. I'm just curious, why isn't there a scenario D with the whole neighborhood? Like, there's some neighbors here who aren't included on any of the plans, like going all the way to the end.
Yep, We could expand it. It's not that we can't. We just tried to look at different options that we could actually make loops, because a looped water system is actually a much more efficient and better running water system, so we didn't want to put just a leg out. But if there are areas that people are very interested that we haven't included, just contact us. We can look at that in the future. And it's, when I talked about that, you know, it's just kind of how many miles or how many linear feet, it's just adding that into the equations. So we just had to come up with, okay, if we did this, if we did that, and it kept on expanding
You can
out.
pass word, we ask that you would pass word to any people you know who might be interested, who are not included on that list, that if they have a concern, test.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest encouragement, like we said, what can you guys do at this point? The more people that we have data points, even if it's preliminarily, and that's why I said test year after year. The problem with a plume and salt contamination is it just doesn't go this way, it goes this way. So the neighbor next to you starts to see contamination, you might be the next one to start seeing it. It's not gonna just, it might not go completely to the left. Obviously, Woodlawn is the lowest point, but it's gonna start seeping up as it heads to the lake, okay? That's how the groundwater flows, pretty definitively. And I'm not a hydrologist, so don't quote me.
But you know more than.
I know that was
I'm
the
gonna let
one.
Heather answer that. You guys can answer those
Can I ask
questions.
a question?
Absolutely.
Julie Carvel, Woodlawn Drive. Really bad salt contamination. I've been on the program. I had 3 tests done. All of a sudden, there's arsenic. You're off the program.
Yep.
So when you try to go on the program, and then you get arsenic and you're off the program, now what do we do?
So our policy is that, I try to make.
To clean up the arsenic.
No, well, no, yes and no. I mean, our policy is there, so MassDOT doesn't fix poorly constructed wells. So we have these policies in place because people come in with dug wells that are, whatever. So poorly constructed wells. We understand that some people have naturally occurring things, and so it's kind of this, I'm saying this publicly, it's kind of this like loophole. If you can get your water potable at the tap, if you do that and it's potable at the tap, then you can come into the program.
So I've been in the program. I emailed you probably a month ago to say how 2019 you kicked me out. How do I get back on? I haven't heard.
My apologies, but please reach out. I'll tell you, anybody that tries to get into the program, I can tell you there's a way to get in. Whether it's you're using a water softener, you've got ledge there. In our experience, the brine, the salty brine goes right into the ground, especially if it's shallow, and we see that elevated salt concentrations from that oftentimes. So whether it be just switching over to a potassium chloride for a while, or whether or not it's putting in a under-the-counter RO system to make it potable at the tap, if it's bacteria, it has to be done because that's a construction issue, that has to be done. But please reach out.
I did. So what should I do at this point? Should I now put in an under-tap filter system, retest, go back in the program?
Please, please reach out to me and let's.
Okay. I don't know how else to reach out.
She will get back to you.
Did you, also my email?
Changed.
It did, and Okay, yep, please
That's
just,
where I emailed.
okay,
And I'm knowing that Steve was doing this and we were doing this.
So, yeah,
my apologies, I'll, please just send me a quick email on tomorrow morning and I'll get right on it.
All right. Again, Woodlawn, even if it has other arsenic or other issues, the salt is so sky high that it just
Agreed,
can't be disputed.
And that's why everybody there has to get those tests done, because it's hard to believe that there aren't more.
If there's 30 homes on that property that, in that neighborhood that are impacted, then that's really promising for a water line, right? So, and then MassDOT typically, covers all the costs to that point. So then everything going forward, if there's arsenic in the neighborhood deeper, then that's where the conversation goes.
Right. I mean, I think that that's what's important too, the thing about the potable at your tap, it's very easy, if you will, to get it to that point if there's something that's in your tap water, so that you don't lose or not get into the program. It might be, again, I'm not trying to tell you how to sort of get around the system, if you will, but we just want what's best for you all, and ultimately, if that tap water, if it's a matter of a small amount of money to get an under tap system,
It has to be potable at the tap.
so that it's potable at the tap, then if your other stuff is tested and it's got the salt, then you can be, if that area is deemed in there, then you can get in. So I know it sounds a little odd, but that might be worth a small investment if you have something that's throwing a curve.
And I would do it anyway if it were
Right,
my own
right,
home.
because of
and
the
I had-
arsenic anyway,
Yeah,
right.
I would have that, yeah. Yes, sir. Oh, I'm getting beat up tonight, huh?
My only question is,
Yes.
and maybe Todd can help us with this, if we could change the regulations, if you have arsenic in its natural state, can that regulation be changed so that all we have to do is change to make sure that our water softness is not contaminating our well, and that people that have the arsenic in its natural state, okay, can probably go through the program, and then without buying another filtration system to get rid of the arsenic in order to get required to get the potassium chloride program going.
I'll jump in here real quick, because Steve, you and I have talked about this before. I'm going to defer to Laureen on this, but I'll just make one comment. We're looking, to change a policy like that, we're looking at it through the eyes of this neighborhood, but you've got to remember that once you change it, you're talking about the entire Commonwealth of Massachusetts. So it's not something that we can write uniquely for Sturbridge or even for this neighborhood. So I have no clue what the impact of changing the policy to look like that would have on the rest of the Commonwealth, or how it would impact the way the state program works and how those things intertwine with one another. That's way beyond can we try anything? Sure. But I'm not going to throw a big political line at you. I try to be as straightforward always with people, and that is to change that policy, that's not a small thing to do. We'd have to go through a heck of a lot of homework. We'd have to see, what the impact is. The naturally occurring arsenic that's out there, I think, is pretty definitive information that we would have to battle on some level, I imagine a lot of levels, in order to be able to change the policy. But Laureen, you know more about this than me, so.
Well, yeah, then you change it for one neighborhood, just hypothetically speaking, of course, and then it makes it arbitrary. Well, why did you have that in the first place? And, okay, the attorneys came up with that, not me, I'm just the messenger. So, and frankly, an under-the-counter RO is hundreds of dollars, few $100s, when you could receive tens of thousands of dollars in benefits. I just think it's worthwhile.
I think what it's important, we've gotten to the point where we know there's a solution, it's trying to make it feasible. So if it means an investment of a little bit upfront to get something long-term in the future, where if we do the political route, you could be fighting for the next 25 years. Whether you're right or wrong.
We will all be
It might
retired.
not be we will be not
We'll
here.
all be
It might
retired.
not be the fight that you want to fight if the goal is really to get potable water.
But again, the message is get everybody to test.
Marcia Rigsby, 19 Woodlawn Drive. I have a reverse osmosis system and I have a water system as well. I changed to potassium chloride, I just emailed you.
Yep.
So I wait 6 months, I then get my water tested. At that point, if there's high levels of salt, like what happens at that point?
So I have to, typically it's 6 months, and so I need to bring that, we need to discuss that internally. We're hoping maybe we can shave a couple months off of that. But we have to, if you have data from before, then we can look at the data. So yes, you would, after a period of time, then I was going to respond to you later, more detail, but then you resample for sodium and chloride. And if your sodium has dropped considerably, then you realize that you're impacting your own property. But again, that's all in the weeds. So I have the receipt and just continue to use it. And
So do I need to test now and after?
when was the
or-
last time you tested? You must have tested at some point.
Have you called it back? Because normally you send
It was
people.
testing pre-COVID and then.
Well, yeah, but she has to test to apply to the program for us to deny her, so I don't know when that was.
It was
It doesn't-
pre-COVID when we started.
Paperwork.
Yeah.
It was like 19 or 20.
Yeah. It was like 19 or 20.
Okay, no, don't worry about it. Just don't worry about it. I mean, you already established that you had a salt
I'm
problem.
gonna go through this.
Yep.
Say there are high levels
Yep.
of sodium, then.
Oh, then you just, after you'd be back into the program and somebody be coming out and sampling.
Okay.
Yep.
Then what? Like.
So then
So
you're
you
part
said-
of that.
Then you're part of the
You
program.
talked to- But you talked about like either drilling or adding
Yeah,
reverse
so
osmosis system,
would-
like
would I-
how long? like,
Well,
reverse
that's, so usually it's about a year. There was somebody else in the program, and he qualified for the program, but we put an under-the-counter RO for him to buy us some time for this, because if we do something, if we drill you a well, then you are exempt from any funding from, like, you know what I mean? We only pay once.
Or put in a system.
Right.
Put in a
So,
system.
right, it's.
That's why the under tap
That's why we
is-
want to
right.
get everybody in, so that if the decision has to be made, basically, they're at the point, for the people that are already in the program, they're almost at the point of, are we drilling you a well, or are we putting an RO system in?
Okay.
Or are we bringing potable
Bringing
water?
water.
But they're not gonna, they don't get counted to the potable water if you do the other two things, or other things. So you don't, it's almost an either-or situation, so they want to get the bulk of people so that we can move down that path.
It's almost like the immediate large-scale remediation is a bit on hold
Okay.
until we can make sure, so instead of putting a Band-Aid on each house, we want to put, like, suture the whole wound. And so that's kind of, I think, why we need to ascertain what that is. Or else maybe it is going to be drill new wells for a certain few people. That might be the best course of action, but until, we can't really know that. And so in the short term, I think that's why even for your health, the underwater tap, things like that are great. And getting into the program, and then we're hoping to at least come to some decision-making relatively soon, once there's a handle on those numbers. And that's where, like Rep. Smola says, if we go the legislative route, you'd be waiting forever, and you would want to do something in between. We're hoping to have this by government standards, relatively quick process, even though you've been waiting 40 years. So, thank you.
You're off the hook.
Liz Banks, Walker Pond Road. What is the timeline on this?
Well, that's,
Yeah.
part of that timeline question depends on how many people we can get in the program, how quickly. And then the next step, like I said, is getting the interest in going to town meeting, because it would have to be voted at town meeting. Now, it's not going to be on this year's town meeting. It doesn't mean that it couldn't be put on a special, I would assume, which would be like, a year right now, a year from right now. But then, even then, once we put it on the special, we have to go through final design, permit, all of those steps.
Talking 5 years, 10 years?
2 years at best.
2? Right, and when you talk about the program, what is that?
The salt remediation program?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's if you have a contaminated well that's contaminated with salt. Mass DOT runs a salt remediation program where you sample your well, you get into the program, you prove that you're not putting water softener salt into your well, not contaminating your own program, don't have any other contaminants. That's when we were talking about E. coli and the other contaminants. If you qualify, they come out and do the sampling. That is where the money and the funding comes through to.
So everybody needs to do that?
Everybody needs to sample their well to see if they have salt. or other
And in
contaminants.
some ways, because I think the more people that have it and the more that the state would do the funding.
It makes it easier on the rest of the people.
And it's going to be quicker, if you will, if there's less, it's less controversial if there's less funding on you, the individual homeowner.
Correct.
Or town, or betterments, than if it's coming right from the Commonwealth, where it's just an expenditure on the Commonwealth's part.
All right, thank you.
I have a question, most orders when I was, when I was looking at the map, we had A was Woodlawn, B was School Village, and some other, I guess.
It's Falls Road.
So so am I to understand that those groups are depending on, like, we did the A, the B, and the C, and they're all separate, or I heard,
No, so A,
and B were together?
no, so what happens is, A is the always, it's A plus B plus C. So A, you can't do C without doing A and B. Okay, because obviously the water line can't get there, so it's adding, it's expanding the system. So it's how big are we making the expansion? Part of that is, obviously, when you look at those numbers, the more residents, the lower the cost. But there's also those plus and minuses because you have to put the water line further, right? So we just wanted to get an idea, if there's 100 residents, what would the cost be? And that would be how we'd get to those numbers.
So my next question is, if you have good water and you like the water the way it is right now, and they did put the line in, would we have to again? Can we continue to have our well?
So you don't have to connect, but it depends on whether the betterment is written, whether you have to pay or not. So the way a betterment works is, the way it's looking at it is, it's improving your property, it's making your property better, because now you have a public service that is a guaranteed public, makes it better, increases the property values, however you want to look at it. That's the way the state looks at a betterment procedure. So you might have to pay the betterment, which would give you the ability to always, to connect in the future if anything ever happened to your well, or anything of that nature. Now, Board of Health has their own rules. It doesn't really apply to wells, but like if you ever found contamination in your well, if you have high arsenic, they may tell you on the sale of your well that you have to connect, because it's a public health concern then. But a lot of times, none of that happens until it triggers like a sale. Just like a Title V inspection on your home. Nobody knows until they do a Title V inspection that you might have an in for your septic system.
What was the date that the state found that they were actually liable for certain houses?
It was several years, probably during COVID, probably several years.
Several years ago?
Mhm.
No one's gotten an email ever since? from
Well,
the
that's
state?
not,
Nothing?
no, Steve Zoto's been working really hard, and there has been some people that have come through the program, some people that we go out and we're sampling, actually we're done with, and now we're kind of waiting. We were approached.
The state knew and then didn't email people to like not drink their water, get it tested, do all this stuff?
Well, salt is a secondary contaminant, so it's not a primary contaminant, and Steve was going door to door, and we don't go out and just mail letters to everybody saying, test your water, because it's a secondary contaminant. You have sodium on your French fries. It's just, yeah.
Maybe it'd be easier if I kind of explained the sequence that I went through. Knowing adjacent to the ramp, we knew we had problems with the de-icing. We knew our waters could be contaminated with the salt. So what we did is notified Lorraine, and they sent someone out. Sure enough, we have salt in our water, but then we found out we also had arsenic. And their regs state that because we have arsenic, we have to take care of that first before you get back on a program. So what I did, they sell reversed osmosis systems at Home Depot. It costs like $250. I installed it myself, and I'm not trying to recommend anybody else to do it on their own. It wasn't that hard of a deal. So once I realized I got rid of the salt and the arsenic, I called up Lorraine again, I says, I have reversed osmosis. My testing I did personally, I says the arsenic is gone, but the well is still going, I want to get on the potassium. So at that point, she sent, I bought the potassium, which is extremely expensive compared to the regular salt. It's like $30-something a bag. So I did that. The state in turn sent people from UMass to test my water for a 6-month period, because that's what I did the salt for. At that point, they said, yep, you're good. The potassium chloride's not eating the salt that you have. And that's what the potassium chloride shows. It's a conflict. It proves that the salt that's in the ground was from them and not from the potassium, because none of the potassium showed. So, and that's the process that I went through. And she was more than willing to say, okay, I'll send people out there, and they do it. I think, what's her name?
Erica?
Yeah. She came out 3 times and said, yep, no, you're good. So I was trying to get everybody else to probably follow the same track. That's all I can say. So, but I have a question now with the arsenic being a contaminant.
Yes.
The people that live away from the turnpike, they found out that they have arsenic. Could they go on to the program with the state or relieve them?
If they do not have salt, then no.
No?
No.
Yours is strictly salt
Yes.
contaminant?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
I guess, like Tyler's point is, why does it have to be word of mouth in the neighborhood? Like,
Well, okay, I mean, Steve told me that he was knocking on everybody's door, and so it's a neighborhood association, he said he was gonna bring it up with the association, he was gonna knock on everybody's door and ask everybody to test. You know, it's not, MassDOT doesn't just go out and, alarm people and say, test your water, so.
Any other questions? If you think of anything, don't hesitate to email any of us or reach out to any of us on rgrim@sturbridge.gov. We're all pretty easy on our emails to find us. And Heather, you know. Yeah, well, that'll be another topic for another day.
David Brown, Rockland, 52 Old Village Road, asking for a friend. When did the state admit that it was their responsibility for poisoning his well? Why did the state admit to poisoning his well? And why, at that point, didn't the state fix it? Whether you drill a well 400 feet or 1,000 feet, if he did all of this mediation and it was proved, why is it taking so long to fix him? He deserves to be taken care of now, because he's proved that it's not his fault.
Okay, so.
Why do we have to get everybody in the neighborhood to chip in and find the best price for the state, when this man didn't do anything to have the problems he has? Thank you.
Well, the push has been for a water line. Otherwise, Mr. Zotto, you're speaking to exactly, wants a water line. And there are multiple people that have contamination in the neighborhood, salt contamination. And the best long-term solution for the salt is a water line. And I would like to bring that to the neighborhood at no cost to the people that are impacted by the salt. I just need enough people to qualify. Otherwise, it's going to be,
Again, every one that they knock off, one at a time, is one less to get everybody fixed.
What is that number? And I didn't hear when the state admitted. When did the state admit that it was their fault? When did the state admit that it was their fault, that contaminated their water?
Years ago.
Yeah, so my state representative should have an answer for that too. besides that? What is the break-even point? How many people do we have to get this water line across? Because that's what I think we want. I want the people whose wells are affected to be fixed, not 20 years later.
Well, that's why we're here, sir. I mean, we've been on it,
I know, I know.
for 2 years,
yeah.
and here we are.
So let's get some,
We're
let's
on
get
it.
some, like, we
So
paid to have
we've
a
got
report
room
done.
full of people, sir. We are, believe me, we are trying. I can't help what happened in 1985 when I was a senior in high school.
I can't either. I've only been here 8 years.
I know, I understand, and I understand the frustration, I do, and your water is so important to you, it's probably the single most important thing we have in our homes, so I
Right,
get it.
So to make clear, so Woodland needs to have the water tested and remediation, whatever has to be done to get rid of the arsenic. Everyone has arsenic in this neighborhood, and that's ours. But do we have an idea of what the number is? What do we need to get to? What's our threshold? Is it 30 people? Is it 20?
Yeah, basically 30, so that it doesn't cost anybody money. If it's less than that, and people want it, that's where it comes into, so here are the options. If it's only 20 people, and the state says, well, we'll foot the bill for so much of it, and the rest is gonna be betterments, or how it's divided and how the money's divided, that takes a little longer, because now we've gotta calculate out what each cost is gonna be, whether it's over 20 years, getting approval from town meeting. That's why if you hit that sort of 30 threshold, and
The
the
closer you
Commonwealth
get to
funds
30.
it, the better chance you have of the Commonwealth funding it, and realistically, that's the 2 years at best time frame that Heather's talking about. When it starts going into betterments and it goes to town meeting, if it doesn't get approved by chance, now likely it would, because the other people who are gonna vote, it doesn't impact them, so they're gonna say yes, they don't care. But again, that's time consuming, that requires borrowings, there's more time to it. I'm not saying that we should manufacture numbers, but it's a shame not to have it go this way if there are legitimately 30 that qualify. And because we just didn't test them all or test them all the right way, we don't end up with that, and we have to put betterments if you all vote for that. And then really the complication with betterments is some of you might say no. And now, if you don't get 70% of you to agree to it, and 30% don't, because we do have property rights, right? And if 30% say, no, I don't want to do that, I'm just going to put my own little system in, I'm done with it, then it doesn't happen. So that's why it's so important. Again, I'm not saying or condoning manufacturing numbers, but the reality is it could be 30, very legitimately, and we just don't know.
Right,
So
so-
that's the bottom line message that comes out of all of this.
How long should that take? How long should it take Walker Pond to get to 30? If we only get to, is it a 3-month period?
Well, it
Like, I'd
depends
like
how
to
many
get
of you-
him, I'd like to
depends.
get him fresh water before he dies.
Well-
That's my,
We all would. But the reality is it depends how quickly everybody gets tested. And then there's a process on the other end. And that's what Lorraine is saying, that she's trying to sort of speed that process up.
well, we've got to do our job first.
Yes.
Right? We got to get the town, the neighborhood.
And the start is here.
At least the loop line.
Yeah.
Right, I'm up on Old Village, so it doesn't, I'd love to have city water, I would love it. But I don't have these problems. I have enough filtration for a small town myself, but that's okay. I bought the house with that. It's my responsibility. But, so,
I put that up just so
yeah,
that you can see
it's not David's job to get Woodland, right, because I don't care. But I'm a caring.
But you care,
I
right.
do care. But I want them, those people that live there, to get going and then say to themselves collectively, in the next 30 days, get your water tested, and then get it submitted to this young lady, and then if it doesn't reach 30, then the state decides to put wells in, however, whatever they have to do to get these people clean water, potable water, then that should happen not in 2 years, right? So we have a 2-year plan if we want to get, water under Route 90, or it's not enough people to do this, and we do wells or mediation, whatever it is, to get these people the water they need. Thank you.
Thank you. So again, yeah, messages test now, and it starts like today. So, now we have some concrete answers for you. Now we have some concrete plans that we could do. We have a sense of cost, we have a sense of options. And so this is sort of like a great leap-off point.
I just want to say one thing, is that it may not only be Woodlawn. I don't know
Right.
about all of you, if you've all tested. We haven't tested since we bought our house. Been there 30 years. The water was great.
but we have a lot of problems with flooding in our neighborhood. And so many of us may have more contaminants than we need. And so I'm definitely going to get my water tested, and I hope everyone else does.
Thank you.
That's all.
How many people are currently in the program?
Now that you've come back and somebody else, I think we're ballpark 5 or 6.
Okay.
But in the beginning, when Steve had collected a bunch of information, then there was at least 13. So that qualified, they just didn't follow through with just like switching over to potassium chloride or whatever we needed for them to get in the program. But I believe there are at least 13 homes that would qualify for the program.
Okay, and how many people have it already determined that their well is contaminated by salt from the state?
Probably 4, 5, something like that, low number, 4 or 5.
The last question is, if we go all through this and then it does not pass, too many neighbors turned it down, are you then going to take care of us individually that does have, so it would revert back to our well being drilled or a water system?
Yes.
It's just weeding through the process to get to where we go.
Okay. I bought my house on Woodlawn in 2021, and I did not know that my well was contaminated, but I did know that there was a full house system, a full house filter system, which I've been maintaining. But I didn't know about the program, and I'm assuming my well is trash, so.
May I say something though? That maintaining a whole house RO system can be over years, expensive. You have to worry about leaks, you have to worry about all that stuff. And I believe there are some people in your neighborhood that have whole house RO systems, which is why they did not follow through with the program, but you wouldn't have that anymore.
You wouldn't have that maintenance.
So test, again, to those people, you're a great example of someone who might not have thought to test, but should. Yep.
And just so you know, you have to, because of the system, you have to test at point of entry and not afterwards, yeah. I know that's obvious, but.
I'll do that, but I'll figure it out.
Just your outside spout.
Yeah.
That bypasses. They'll test that, then they'll test your sink and. It's all everywhere.
All right, well, thank you, everybody. And again, reach out to us. Oh, we have one more?
One more.
We know the problem. Gentleman has been making a living on the solution, got the state on board. What is Uncle Sam? Federal government. Like this is a tailor-made infrastructure. Millions of dollars going somewhere. Do we have anybody from the state or anybody with the expertise to make a federal grant? A grant.
So that was part of what we said in the last part for us as the town and the state, to look at other funding options that we will explore. But in general, we can do some research and see if there is any federal. I agree with you, it seems like it's a tailor-made infrastructure problem for expansion, but salt remediation doesn't classify it highly as some of the other chemicals that they're looking at, like PFAS and things of that nature, which seem to get a lot more funding these days. So I agree with you, but we said that was part of what we can take on to look at, but.
I've seen that federal grant program work in my before life. But I know it works, and it's big money, and it's available. And this is tailor-made for us. I think we ought to maybe spend a little more time on that.
I want to thank Rep. Smoller again on this. It's, we are small fish in a big pond of the Commonwealth, And without a state representation, it's very hard to take a project, like, there's nothing against DOT, but they have everybody banging on their doors for something, and you really need a partnership. So I do want to thank Rep. Smola for coming, being part of this, and really taking the lead on this with us, because Laureen can only do so much, and there are, everybody needs something. And so you really need somebody to shepherd the project for you. So thanks, Rep. Smola, for your effort on this.
Can we just get Lori's email address?
I'll put it back up again.
Yeah.
And I will make these slides available through both Mr. Soto and your Jack. Thank you, Jack. So I can get that so it's easier too. Okay? But I will I'll try to put it back up again, I can say. You see it there?
Yeah.